Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about migrations, one of my favourite topics, and specifically the importance of SEO for migrations and thinking about SEO from an early stage to avoid losing SEO visibility and losing all of that valuable traffic that you've spent a long time building up, optimizing your website. Migrations can be a great opportunity to fix issues with your website and to improve things, but there's also so many things that can go wrong. But there is no reason why any migration needs to lead to a loss of traffic and a loss of SEO visibility. And sometimes I hear people kind of talking about migrations as if they take it as inevitable, they're going to lose traffic. That isn't the case. But there are some common mistakes that people make, and there's one of the biggest mistakes that people make is not realizing when they're doing a migration. There's lots of different types of migrations out there. So obvious ones are just moving to a whole new platform. There's things like moving domains completely or consolidating domains. So if you've got lots of different domains for each country, consolidating them into one, it's a great opportunity. But that definitely counts as a migration. There's a lot of things that need to be thought about. But there's just things like changing the URL structure. Maybe that's the kind of thing that sometimes people don't think of that as a migration, but it should be treated as a migration. Changing things like the global navigation. The URL structure are all vital to how Google understands your website and the relative importance of pages, the relationships between pages, clusters of pages, and the topical relevance that particular clusters of pages have. So you can lose that very easily by not thinking about these things and not realizing you're doing a migration. Also things like major changes to your international SEO. You need to treat that as if it was a migration, or just call it a migration to make sure that people take it seriously. And if you're doing things like doing a project to remove a lot of content or consolidate a lot of content, that should be considered like a migration as well. It needs to be handled in a similar way because there's a lot of risk involved. And that's one where most often actually I see huge amounts of value being lost because people mistakenly think that pages, just because they don't get SEO traffic, have no SEO value, and that's not the case. It's very important when you're thinking about migrations to think about the fact that Google and other search engines consider your site holistically. They do look at the individual pages and what they're relevant to, but so many signals come from the rest of the site that they sit within. And so pages getting almost no organic traffic can still have value, for example, by providing topical relevancy or because they have backlinks to them. So I'm also going to go through some of the common mistakes that people make, all of which can be avoided. But the first one it leads on nicely to is the fact that often people try and do too many different things at once. So I mentioned a few different types of migration there. Sometimes it does make sense to do multiple things at once. If you're changing platform, then that's a great opportunity to fix the setup of your international sites and so on. But you don't need to do a project of removing lots of content, consolidating content at the same time. If it's because you don't want to have to move everything across to a new platform, then do it beforehand. Don't do it at the same time, because what you're going to do is you're going to make it much more difficult for Google and other search engines to understand what the new structure of your site is and which pages are which relative to what had value before and what they saw as having value before. When you're deleting a lot of pages, you're moving a lot of things around all at once. So either do it a good time before or do it a good time afterwards. Other common mistakes people make, obviously redirects is a big one. It's one of the obvious ones, but implement one-to-one redirects from where the page was before to where it is now, not just to the home page or to another page, and not just for your kind of top dozen or so pages. Do it for all of your pages, please. and check it in staging. There's a lot of just kind of separate stages within a migration. You've got your opportunity to do planning and do the design, and SEO should be kind of thought about at that point. You should have very clear what the basics that are required are. If you're working with a dev team, either as an agency or in-house, you need to tell them what the acceptance criteria is going to be. It needs to be a site that's fully crawlable and indexable, and not just the fact the pages can be found, but the content on the pages can be found. So that's another common mistake. You do a crawl on your staging site, you can see that all the pages are there, but have you checked whether the content's visible? And often this comes down to mistakes with JavaScript and with single page applications, which are stopping content being crawled and being visible to Google. Particularly single page applications or web apps, where basically as a user interacts with the page, the content updates. But if the content updates without the URL updating, there's no URL for the search engines to put that new content against. They're never going to see that content because they follow links. They don't interact with a page in the same way as a human. So that's another kind of big mistake, and that's one of the most devastating kind of migration messes that I've kind of been brought in to try and analyze and understand, was related to a site being moved across to one that relied completely on single page applications, and there were no kind of static URLs for content to be put against. So that's a big one to avoid as well. Now, any of you who know me know that I've worked a lot in international SEO in the past, and so you won't be surprised to hear me say that making a mess of your hreflang is another common mistake. Often migrations are done, and one of the opportunities there is going to be fixing your hreflang. But if you already got it working fairly well, and it gets broken, then that can have a big knock-on impact. If Google kind of see that you don't know how to do your hreflang and it's a mess, even if it's just a mess for a few weeks, it might take Google a while to actually trust you again and trust your hreflang and respect it properly again. There are other common mistakes. I've written a post on my website as well with a bit more information, but hopefully that gives you some idea of just how many pitfalls there are in migrations. You need to have SEO people involved, ideally SEO people with experience of migrations. As I say, one of the services that I offer is consultancy to support with migrations, to fill in any gaps in knowledge that you may have within your team, particularly in-house teams. You may have people who have been working in SEO for a long time, but how many migrations have they actually done in that time? I'm lucky enough, you might say, to have worked on a lot of migrations on a lot of clients in a lot of different areas, including a lot of e-commerce migrations, which come with a lot of their own challenges and risks. So I am able to come in and help and fill in those gaps in knowledge, come in early enough, talk to devs in their language as well, and really make sure they understand the impact of what they're doing, and try and make sure that any potential issues are spotted earlier on, rather than spotting them, at the last minute before launch, and then having to go back and say, well, you need to recode this part of the site, you need to re-platform this part of the site even. The sooner issues are fixed, the cheaper it is at the end of the day, and the more time effective it is to get them fixed. One thing that I'm also sometimes asked to do is just come in and assess a website before it gets launched and say whether it's ready for launch or not. And that can be very valuable. And sometimes it may be that there are differing opinions internally as to exactly what whether a website launch should go ahead. And in some cases there will be things that aren't perfect, but are no worse than what you've had before. And so it may be that these can be fixed after launch. In other cases, you may lose visibility and it may take a very long time to get it back. It isn't as simple as just put things back to how they were before afterwards and expect to get the visibility back, unfortunately. So hopefully that's all been useful. And yeah, do get in contact if you're interested in further information and consultancy around SEO support for website migrations.